Okay, so there's a reason why these two stories pertaining to Ja Morant and Zion Williamson are running concurrently. It's because they understand the magnitude of these two so-called black men. Obviously, they were put on the programming. When it comes to the twinning aspect, it's very stark and it's prevalent. Ja Morant wears number 12. Zion Williamson wears number 1. They both were drafted 1 and 2. The number 12 represents what? Israel. It represents the 12 tribes of Israel. Ja Morant. Ya Morant. Zion Williamson. Zion also being in reference to Israel. The understanding of these two brothers going back to the same AAU school where they played at Spartanburg, South Carolina. We already know the Spartans were of Israel. So it's important for us to understand who descends from Israel. We already know the so-called black men and women. Us of this captivity, we go back to the Israelites according to the Bible. So the scrutinizing aspect, the polarizing aspect, the aspect of all the attention being on the so-called black man for good or bad, that's prominent because of who we go back to, and the powers that be, they already know. So when you have a story about a Zion Williamson where, he gets into this nonsense with this woman that he chooses to knock up, him being young and dumb. And when I say young and dumb, it's not to demean his intellect or anything like that. I'm just talking about his decision making or lack thereof. Zion Williamson getting caught up with the wrong woman. We already understand that that's typical for the so-called black man. The so-called black man in the hood who's pretty much a fuck up. And not saying that so-called black man can't change, but I'm just talking about the aspect of, the stereotypical or the archetypal so-called black man in the hood. Where he puts women on the pedestal, he puts violence and guns on the pedestal and money and shit like that. It's pretty much Zion Williamson playing out the role of the so-called black man who gets into trouble with women, as well as the role of the so-called black man when it comes to Ja Morant, getting into guns and violence and that gang shit. So this is all based off of the three-dimensional aspect where, we can see through these things. And when I say see through these things, I'm not saying that it's fake. I'm just saying being able to tap into what the undertone of it is, what the subconscious message is. Zion and Ya. We already know the letter Y is the archaic J. So the understanding when it comes to the twin programming is so many factors. So many factors. There's so much to that. So Zion and Ja, they both have these stories that's being, up in the forefront or out in the atmosphere, for lack of a better expression. And it's running concurrently because these two brothers are twin programmed. They're put under the programming. And I don't care what nobody say. Ja Morant, he did that based off of the program. And when I'm talking about like him doing that, I'm talking about the flashing of the gun. He did that based off of programming. There's no way that, you do some shit and then like 2 months later you do the same shit. Especially when after you did the initial thing, you had this little mea culpa, you apologized and you said that you had counseling, all this nonsense, all this fake ass shit, just for him to do it again. This is how you know that he was programmed to do so. These brothers, these subjects, a part of the entertainment industry, for the most part, they don't even have their own mind. They don't even have their own mind. They do things based off of triggers, believe it or not. But not to get too deep into that, the understanding of what they pushing when it comes to these stories being, up to the fore, pushed to the forefront, it's all based in the understanding of how it resonates with that archetypal black man and how subconsciously this is what that represents. The so-called black man who gets into nonsensical situations with the woman and who pretty much, glorifies that gang shit. This is what you see with our people, and Zion and Ja are prime examples of it. And they're being used on a mass scale because these people go back to the original people of the book, the Israelites, God's chosen people.